Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched the stars through the main window. His ship had been traveling for 3 weeks toward the Kepler 442 system, where humans had found rich metals and rare elements. The colony, their needed supplies, and Jake's crew was happy to help. Dr. Lisa Chang sat at her station checking data about possible alien life in the system. She had studied aliens her whole life but never met any real ones. Lieutenant Commander Alex Rivera kept watch over the ship's weapons and shields. Engineer Nina Foster worked below in the engine room, making sure everything ran smooth. Jake loved exploring new places in space. Humans had built colonies on 12 worlds across 3 star systems in the past 50 years. Each new world brought hope for humanity's future among the stars. The Defiance carried food, medicine, and machine parts for the miners on Kepler 442b. Jake expected a simple supply run, but space always held surprises. "Captain, I'm getting strange readings," Lisa said from her station. Her voice sounded worried. "There are ships approaching from the far side of the system. Big ships. Really, big ships." Jake walked over to look at her screen. The computer showed 5 massive vessels moving toward them. Each ship was 3 times longer than the Defiance and shaped like giant crystals. They moved in perfect formation without any wobbling or course changes. "Alex, can you identify those ships?" Jake asked his security chief. Alex checked his weapons, computer, and shook his head. "Nothing in our database matches these designs. The energy readings are off the charts. These ships have power sources we've never seen before." Jake felt his stomach tighten. First contact with aliens was supposed to happen under controlled conditions with diplomats and scientists ready, not during a supply run in deep space with just 1 ship and 30 crew members. "Lisa, start recording everything. If these are aliens, humanity needs to know about this meeting." The crystal ships came closer, and Jake could see they were beautiful, in a scary way. Their hulls seemed to glow with inner light, and they moved through space like they owned it. The lead ship was enormous, bigger than anything humans had ever built. "They're sending a transmission," Alex reported. "It's coming through on multiple frequencies at the same time." "Put it on the main screen," Jake ordered. The window filled with the image of something that made Jake's breath catch. The alien stood, 8 feet tall, with a body that looked like it was made of living crystal. Its skin sparkled with blue and silver light. Where humans had eyes, this creature had glowing orbs that seemed to see everything at once. When it spoke, its voice sounded like music mixed with the sound of breaking glass. "Human vessel, you will stop and prepare for inspection. I am Coordinator Prime of the Zephyrian Collective. Your species has entered space that belongs to us for 2,000 of your years." Jake stepped forward and tried to look calm, even though his heart was beating fast. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Defiance. We come in peace and seek friendship with your people." The alien tilted its head in a way that seemed strange. "Friendship is not possible between the collective and individual minds. You humans think as separate beings. This makes you dangerous and unpredictable. The collective has decided that your species must return to your homeworld immediately. Have colonies and people living on 12 worlds," Jake said. "We can't just abandon them." "You will abandon them, or the collective will remove them," the alien replied without any emotion. "Humans have 1 standard year to return all your people to Earth. After that time, any humans found in space will be eliminated." Lisa made a small sound of fear. Alex's hand moved toward his weapon controls, but Jake shook his head slightly. The Defiance was just 1 ship against 5 massive alien vessels. "We need time to discuss this with our government," Jake said. "Discussion is unnecessary. The decision is made. However, the collective is merciful. We will demonstrate why resistance is impossible." The alien made a gesture, and suddenly the Defiance shook hard. Every light on the bridge went out except for emergency power. The ship's engines stopped working and all the weapon systems shut down. "How did they do that?" Alex whispered. Nina's voice came over the communication system from the engine room. "Captain, they did something to our systems. Everything just stopped working at the same time. It's like they reached into our computers and turned them off. The alien appeared on the screen again. Your weapons and engines are disabled but not damaged. This is a gift to show the collective's power. Your ship will carry our message to your leaders. Humans will leave this region of space or face destruction. Jake felt helpless but tried not to show it. Our people won't abandon their homes without a fight. Fighting the collective is impossible. We have 50,000 ships and control 200 star systems. We think as one mind and make no mistakes. Humans think as individuals and make many mistakes. This makes you weak. The crystal ships began to move away. Jake watched them go and felt like he was watching humanity's future disappear with them. Captain, our systems are coming back online, Nina reported from engineering. Alex checked his weapons. Everything works again, but I don't understand how they did that. Lisa was studying the recordings of the meeting. Captain, I noticed something strange. When the alien talked about humans thinking as individuals, it seemed confused, like it couldn't understand how we make decisions without sharing thoughts. Jake nodded slowly. Maybe that's important. Maybe being different from them isn't just a weakness. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks. Jake spent most of that time thinking about the aliens' words. The Zephyrian collective was clearly more advanced than humans. Their ships were bigger, their weapons were stronger, and they had controlled this part of space for thousands of years. But something about the way the aliens spoke bothered Jake. When the Defiance finally reached Earth, Jake immediately contacted the United Earth Defense Council. Admiral Kate Sullivan listened to the recordings and read Jake's report with a serious face. 50,000 ships, she said quietly. Our entire fleet has less than 2,000 vessels. Admiral, there might be hope, Jake said. The alien couldn't understand human individuality. Maybe that gives us some kind of advantage. Kate looked at the star chart showing human colonies scattered across 3 systems. Millions of people lived on those worlds. They had built homes, raised families, and created new societies. The idea of abandoning everything seemed impossible. We have 11 months to find a solution, Kate said. If we can't find a way to fight the collective, humanity's time among the stars is over. Jake looked out the window at Earth, floating in space below. Somewhere out there, the Zephyrian collective waited with their crystal ships and their unified mind. Humanity faced its greatest challenge ever, but Jake remembered something his grandfather once told him about courage. Real courage wasn't about not being afraid. Real courage was being afraid and doing what needed to be done anyway. Humans would need all the courage they could find in the months ahead. Admiral Kate Sullivan walked into the emergency meeting room on Luna Station 3 months after the Defiance returned from Kepler 442. The room was full of Earth's best military leaders, scientists, and strategists. Everyone looked worried because the reports from Space Scouts were getting worse each week. The Zephyrian collective had moved ships to the edges of human space and waited like patient hunters. Dr. Marcus Bell sat at the main table studying battle plans that all looked hopeless. Commander Ryan Torres checked flight patterns for Earth's fastest ships. Dr. Amy Watson worked on her computer trying to find some weakness in alien technology. All the smart people in the room had the same problem. How do you fight an enemy that has 50,000 ships when you only have 2,000? Give me the latest intelligence report, Kate said as she sat down. Marcus cleared his throat and looked at his notes. The collective controls over 200 star systems. Their ships can move faster than light without using jump gates like we do. They have energy shields that change to stop any weapon we fire at them. Worst of all, they can phase through solid matter when they want to. Ryan shook his head. Our best pilots have run simulations against their technology. We lose every single battle. Even if we used every ship in the fleet at once, we'd be destroyed in less than an hour. Dr. Watson looked up from her computer. I've been studying the recordings from the Defiance. The alien's brain works differently than ours. It shares thoughts with thousands of other aliens at the same time. They make decisions instantly because they all think together. Kate felt the weight of impossible choices. Every military advisor told her to surrender immediately, send all the colonists back to Earth and hope the collective kept their promise to leave humans alone. But Kate knew that abandoning the colonies would break humanity's spirit. People had worked too hard building new worlds to give up without trying. There has to be something we can do, Kate said. Humans have won battles against bigger enemies before. Marcus smiled for the first time in weeks. You know what, Admiral? You're right. Let me tell you about some old battles. He brought up pictures on the main screen. 300 Spartans held off thousands of Persian soldiers at Thermopylae. A few hundred Texans fought thousands of Mexican soldiers at the Alamo. Small groups of fighters have beaten larger armies throughout human history. But those battles were fought with swords and guns, Ryan said. The collective has technology we can't even understand. Dr. Watson suddenly sat up straight in her chair. Wait a minute, Marcus, show those battle records again. She studied the pictures carefully. Look at the pattern. In every case where humans won against bigger forces, they did something the enemy didn't expect. They broke the rules of normal warfare. Kate leaned forward. What do you mean? The collective thinks as one mind, Watson explained. That makes them incredibly smart and efficient. But it also means they always choose the most logical solution to any problem. They can't imagine making choices that seem stupid or wasteful. Marcus started to understand. You're saying their greatest strength might also be a weakness. Exactly. Humans make decisions based on emotions, gut feelings, and crazy ideas. The collective can't predict that kind of thinking because it's not logical. Kate felt hope for the first time since the crisis began. So instead of fighting them like a normal military would, we fight them like humans. Ryan was getting excited. We could use tactics that make no sense, attack targets that aren't important, use weapons that shouldn't work, make them think we're completely insane. Dr. Watson pulled up more data on her computer. I've been analyzing how the collective makes decisions. They always choose the most efficient path. They never waste resources. They never take unnecessary risks. If we do the opposite of what they expect, we might confuse their thinking process. Kate stood up and walked to the window that looked out at Earth. Millions of people down there were counting on this room full of officers and scientists to save humanity's future in space. The traditional approach would fail completely, but maybe a non-traditional approach could work. All right, Kate said. We're going to try something that's never been done before. Instead of one big coordinated defense, we'll create hundreds of small independent groups. Each group gets basic objectives but complete freedom to decide how to achieve them. Marcus looked worried. Admiral, that goes against everything we know about military strategy. Without central command and control, our forces will be scattered and ineffective. That's exactly what the collective will think too, Kate replied. They'll expect us to mass our forces for a big, decisive battle. Instead, we'll spread out and attack everywhere at once using tactics that change constantly. Dr. Watson was typing fast on her computer. I can design psychological profiles for each group. Some will be aggressive and loud, others will be sneaky and quiet. Some will attack military targets, others will go after civilian infrastructure. The key is making sure no two groups use the same approach. Ryan was studying star charts. This could actually work. If we move fast enough and change tactics often enough, the collective won't be able to adapt. Their unified thinking process will become a disadvantage. Kate felt energy returning to the room. For the first time, people were talking about winning instead of just surviving. We'll call it Operation Wildcard. Every human commander gets to play their own game by their own rules. The planning session continued for 12 hours. They designed training programs that taught soldiers to think creatively under pressure. They built new weapons that worked on principles that seemed wasteful, but might surprise alien technology. They created communication systems that let small groups coordinate without revealing their plans to enemy listeners. When the meeting finally ended, Kate looked around the room at tired but determined faces. In 8 months, humanity would face the most powerful enemy they had ever encountered. The logical choice was surrender. The safe choice was retreat. But humans had never been completely logical or safe. That might be exactly what saved them. As everyone left Luna Station to begin preparations, Kate thought about the collective's biggest mistake. They assumed that human individuality made people weak and disorganized. They were about to learn that sometimes chaos was more powerful than order. and that the courage to try impossible things could change the outcome of any battle. Colonel Sam Hayes crouched behind a broken asteroid and watched the Zephyrian patrol ships move through the debris field. 8 months had passed since Admiral Sullivan approved Operation Wildcard, and now the invasion had begun. The crystal ships moved in perfect formation just like always, but Sam's team was about to teach them that humans didn't believe in perfect anything. Lieutenant Eva Martinez checked her fighter's stealth systems one more time. Her ship looked like a piece of space junk floating among the real debris, but it carried enough firepower to damage a collective cruiser. Chief Petty Officer Tony Chen worked on his latest crazy invention in the cargo bay. Dr. Helen Brooks recorded everything on her computer because someone needed to document how humans fought when logic went out the window. "Remember the plan," Sam whispered into his communicator. "There is no plan. We make it up as we go and change everything every hour." The Zephyrian ships expected human forces to mass together for a big battle. Instead, they found small groups, scattered across dozens of star systems doing things that made no military sense. Some human ships attacked empty supply vessels while ignoring important command ships. Other groups used weapons that were clearly inferior, but somehow worked anyway. The collective's perfect logic couldn't handle opponents who deliberately made bad choices. Eva launched her fighter from the asteroid and flew straight toward the largest Zephyrian ship. Any sane pilot would attack from the sides or behind where there were fewer weapons. Eva aimed for the front, where all the guns could shoot at her. The aliens had planned for logical attacks, but not for a human pilot who flew like she wanted to die. The collective ships fired their energy beams, but Eva rolled and spun her fighter in patterns that looked random. She wasn't following any flight manual or training program. She was flying on instinct and emotion, making split-second decisions that even she couldn't predict. The alien computers couldn't calculate where she would go next, because Eva didn't know either. Tony's voice crackled over the radio. "Eva, try playing some music when you get close to their ship. I've been experimenting with sound frequencies." "What kind of music?" Eva asked while dodging another energy blast. "Anything loud and obnoxious. I recommend heavy metal." Eva switched on her fighter's external speakers and blasted music from Earth's rock bands at maximum volume. The sound waves hit the Zephyrian ship's crystal hull, and something amazing happened. The aliens' shields flickered and their weapons stopped firing for a few seconds. "Tony, you beautiful genius," Sam shouted over the radio. "Music disrupts their crystalline systems." Dr. Brooks was typing notes as fast as she could. The emotional content of human music creates vibration patterns that interfere with their technology. This shouldn't work according to physics, but it does. The Zephyrian ships tried to adapt to the music attack, but humans kept changing songs. Classical music had different effects than rock music. Jazz confused their sensors, while country music seemed to make their navigation systems malfunction. The aliens' logical minds couldn't understand why humans would weaponize art. Sam led his boarding team onto a disabled collective transport ship. They moved through the corridors without following standard military procedures. Sometimes they split up when they should stay together. Sometimes they bunched up when they should spread out. The alien defenders couldn't predict where the humans would go because the humans changed their tactics every few minutes. Tony carried a bag full of improvised weapons that violated several laws of physics. He had modified human tools to work in ways their designers never intended. A mining laser became a shield disruptor. A food processor became a computer virus delivery system. A children's toy became a sensor scrambler. The collectives advanced. Technology couldn't defend against weapons that shouldn't exist. The humans fought their way to the ship's command center, where they found something unexpected. The Zephyrian crew members were arguing with each other. Sam had never seen aliens disagree about anything before. The collective always thought as one mind, but these creatures were acting like individuals. "What's happening to them?" Eva asked, over the radio. Dr. Brooks checked her readings. "I think we're teaching them how to think separately. Our chaotic behavior is forcing them to make individual decisions instead of collective ones." One of the Zephyrian officers turned to Sam and spoke in broken human language. "Your species fights without unity. This creates confusion in our shared consciousness." some of us begin to think alone. Sam realized that humanity wasn't just winning battles. They were accidentally destroying the aliens' way of life. The collective's greatest strength was their unified thinking, but exposure to human chaos was breaking that unity. Individual Zephyrians were starting to have their own thoughts and opinions. The battles continued across multiple star systems. Human commanders used tactics that got more creative and illogical as time went on. Commander Beth Taylor led naval battles where her ships performed impossible maneuvers that succeeded through pure luck and stubborn determination. General Carlos Rodriguez coordinated attacks that looked completely uncoordinated, but somehow worked together. Engineer Paul Jackson invented new weapons every day using spare parts and crazy ideas. His devices shouldn't have functioned according to any scientific principles, but they worked because Jackson believed they would work. The collective's logical analysis couldn't explain how human determination could override physical laws. After 6 months of chaotic warfare, something unprecedented happened. A group of Zephyrian ships stopped in the middle of a battle and requested to talk instead of fight. The alien commander who made contact sounded different from the perfect voices humans had heard before. "We wish to discuss terms that do not involve complete victory for either side," the alien said. "The collective is experiencing thoughts and feelings that we do not understand. Some of us no longer wish to fight." Sam looked at his team and saw the same amazement on their faces. Humans had done more than survive against impossible odds. They had changed their enemies into something new. The courage to fight when fighting seemed hopeless had created possibilities that neither side had imagined when the war began. General Carlos Rodriguez stood in the command center watching reports come in from across human space. The war had been going on for 6 months, and something strange was happening to the Zephyrian collective. Their perfect formations were breaking apart. Their unified attacks were becoming confused and disorganized. Some alien ships had stopped fighting completely and were floating in space like they didn't know what to do next. Captain Zoe Kim sent her latest report from behind enemy lines. She had infiltrated a collective command ship and discovered something that changed everything. The aliens were having arguments. Individual Zephyrians were questioning orders from their leaders. Some were even refusing to fight humans anymore. "General, you need to see this recording," Zoe said over the secure communication link. "I watched 2 Zephyrian officers disagree about battle tactics. They actually shouted at each other. I didn't think their species could do that." Engineer Paul Jackson was in his workshop building another impossible weapon. This one used music, colored lights, and human laughter to disrupt alien technology. It shouldn't work according to any known science, but Paul had learned that believing in crazy ideas was sometimes more powerful than following logical rules. Commander Beth Taylor commanded a fleet of human ships that moved through space like a school of fish instead of a military formation. Her vessels changed direction based on the pilot's instincts rather than computer calculations. The collective couldn't predict where the human ships would go because the humans themselves didn't know until they got there. The biggest change was happening inside the Zephyrian collective itself. For 2,000 years, every member of their species had shared thoughts and emotions through their crystal technology. They made decisions as one mind and never disagreed about anything, but contact with humans was breaking that connection. Individual Zephyrians were experiencing feelings they had no words for: doubt, curiosity, fear, wonder. These emotions created conflicts in their shared consciousness that spread like a virus through their entire civilization. The perfect unity that made them powerful was becoming the weakness that destroyed them. Zoe reported from the collective ship that alien crew members were doing strange things. Some were creating art instead of following orders. Others were asking questions about the purpose of the war. A few had started using individual names instead of their collective designations. "There's a Zephyrian here who calls himself 7 Alpha, Zoe transmitted. "He asked me what it feels like to think alone. I tried to explain human individuality, but I don't think he understood. He seemed frightened and excited at the same time." Paul Jackson's latest weapon test showed that human emotions could be transmitted through technology to affect alien minds. Recordings of human children laughing caused Zephyrian computers to malfunction. Images of human art made their navigation systems produce random patterns. Love songs from Earth created feedback loops in their communication networks. "We're not just fighting them," Paul explained to the other engineers. "We're teaching them how to be individuals. Every time they try to understand our chaotic behavior, they become a little more human themselves." The psychological impact was spreading beyond the battlefield. Collective worlds that had been perfectly organized for centuries were experiencing riots and rebellions. Zephyrians who had never questioned authority were demanding answers about the war's purpose. The unified government that had ruled their species for millennia was falling apart. General Rodriguez faced a moral dilemma that no human commander had ever confronted. Victory was within reach, but it meant destroying an entire way of life. The collective hadn't just lost the war against humanity. They had lost their identity as a species. Dr. Helen Brooks studied the psychological profiles of captured Zephyrians and found that they were becoming more human-like every day. They were developing individual personalities, personal preferences, and private thoughts. Some were even showing creativity and humor. "General, we need to decide what kind of victory we want," Helen said during a strategy meeting. "We can finish destroying the collective and scatter their forces completely, or we can try to help them adapt to their new individual consciousness." Commander Taylor brought her fleet back to base after another successful battle. Her pilots reported that many Zephyrian ships had simply stopped fighting in the middle of combat. Their crews were too busy arguing among themselves to coordinate attacks. "The enemy is defeating themselves," Taylor told Rodriguez. "Half their ships are refusing orders from the other half. They're having what humans would call a civil war, except they don't understand the concept of internal conflict." The breakthrough came when Zephyrian Prime Consciousness 7 Alpha contacted human forces directly. He spoke as an individual, rather than part of the collective, using personal pronouns that his species had never needed before. "I wish to speak with human leaders about ending this conflict," 7 Alpha transmitted. "The collective no longer exists as you first encountered it. We have become something new and we do not know how to proceed." Rodriguez realized that humanity had won the war without achieving total military victory. They had changed their enemies, so fundamentally that the original collective was gone forever. What remained were millions of individual Zephyrians who were learning to think and feel like separate beings. The general made a decision that would affect both species for generations. Instead of demanding surrender, he would offer something unprecedented in galactic history, a chance for former enemies to become partners in building something entirely new. 7 Alpha, I propose that we meet to discuss not just ending this war, but creating a new kind of peace. Humans and Zephyrians working together as individuals instead of fighting as enemies. The response came quickly. "We accept this proposal. Many of us are eager to learn more about individual existence. We have discovered that thinking alone can be both frightening and wonderful." Rodriguez looked at his officers and saw hope replacing the exhaustion of months of warfare. Humanity's greatest victory wasn't defeating a superior enemy. It was having the courage to transform that enemy into an ally and create possibilities that neither side had imagined when the fighting began. President Rachel Morrison walked through the corridors of the newly built space station that floated between Earth and Zephyrian space. The station had been constructed in just 2 months by humans and aliens working together for the first time in galactic history. Rachel felt nervous about the meeting that would determine the future of both species. Ambassador Lucas Grant reviewed his notes one final time before the historic negotiations began. He had spent weeks learning about Zephyrian culture and psychology, but everything had changed since the war started. The aliens he would meet today were not the same unified collective that had threatened humanity a year ago. Admiral Kate Sullivan accompanied the diplomatic team as military advisor. Her ships had won the war through chaos and creativity, but now she hoped to win the peace through understanding and cooperation. The greatest battles were behind them, but the greatest challenges still lay ahead. Dr. Lisa Chang prepared her translation equipment and cultural analysis computers. She had studied alien behavior since first contact, but the Zephyrians had evolved so much during the conflict that her old research was almost useless. These were not the same creatures who had demanded human surrender from their crystal ships. The meeting room was designed to accommodate both human and Zephyrian needs. soft lighting for human eyes and crystal resonators for alien communication systems, chairs for humans and standing platforms for the tall, crystalline beings. Everything in the room represented compromise and mutual adaptation. 7 Alpha entered the room, and Rachel saw immediately how much the aliens had changed. Instead of the perfect coordination she had seen in recordings, this Zephyrian moved with individual uncertainty. His crystal skin flickered with colors that seemed to reflect personal emotions rather than collective thoughts. "President Morrison, I greet you as one individual to another," 7 Alpha said. His voice carried musical tones that sounded different from the unified speech patterns of the old collective. "I am still learning how to speak only for myself instead of for millions of others." Lucas began the formal negotiations, but Rachel quickly realized that traditional diplomacy wouldn't work. These Zephyrians were experiencing individuality for the first time, and they needed guidance more than they needed treaties. 7 Alpha, can you explain what's happening to your people? Rachel asked. The aliens' colors shifted to patterns that Lisa's computer identified as confusion mixed with wonder. "The war with humans broke our shared consciousness. At first, this felt like death. We had never experienced loneliness or private thoughts. But then we discovered that individual thinking allows for creativity, hope, and personal growth." Kate leaned forward. "How many of your people have been affected?" "Nearly half of our population now thinks as individuals. The others remain in smaller collective groups, but even they are changing. Your species has taught us that unity and diversity can both be sources of strength." Lucas presented the formal terms that Earth's government had approved. Territory, agreements, trade arrangements, and military cooperation protocols. But 7 Alpha seemed more interested in cultural exchange than political details. "Ambassador Grant, we wish to learn more about human emotions, art, and individual expression. In return, we offer our technology and knowledge of the galaxy. But most importantly, we offer friendship between species that have learned to understand each other." Rachel realized that this moment was about more than ending a war. Humanity and the Zephyrians had the chance to create something completely new in galactic civilization, a partnership between individual thinkers and collective consciousness that could benefit both species. 7 Alpha, what do you propose for the future? The aliens' colors brightened to what Lisa's computer interpreted as excitement and hope. "We propose the Individual Rights Compact, a treaty that protects the right of all beings to think and choose for themselves, whether they prefer individual consciousness or collective unity." The negotiations continued for 3 days, but the real breakthrough came when 7 Alpha brought other Zephyrians to meet the human team. Some were individuals like himself who had embraced personal identity. Others remained part of smaller, collective groups but now respected individual choice. Rachel watched human children and young Zephyrians play together in the station's recreation area. The alien children flickered with rainbow colors as they learned games from their human friends. The human children laughed with delight at the beautiful light displays their new alien companions could create. Dr. Chang documented everything for the historical record. The first peace treaty between humans and aliens. The birth of individual consciousness in a collective species. The beginning of true cooperation between radically different forms of intelligence. Admiral Sullivan reflected on how the war had changed both species. Humans had proven that courage and creativity could overcome superior technology. Zephyrians had learned that individual thinking could be more powerful than collective unity. Both sides had discovered that understanding was stronger than conquest. Final ceremony took place in the station's main hall with representatives from both species present. Rachel signed the Individual Rights Compact knowing that she was creating the foundation for a new era in galactic civilization. 7 Alpha added his signature using crystal technology that created permanent patterns in the treaty document. This agreement protects not just humans and Zephyrians but any species we encounter in the future. The right to think freely is now a universal principle. As the ceremonies ended and delegates prepared to return to their homeworlds, Rachel looked out at the stars and thought about courage. Humans had shown courage in fighting an impossible war, But their greatest courage had been choosing to build peace instead of demanding total victory. The Defiance passed by the station on its way to explore new star systems. Captain Jake Morrison sent a message congratulating his sister on the successful negotiations. Humanity was returning to the stars, but now they traveled as partners with former enemies who had become friends. The courage that made humans unstoppable wasn't their willingness to fight. It was their willingness to hope, to change, and to believe that even the greatest enemies could become the greatest allies. In teaching the Zephyrians how to be individuals, humans had learned something equally important about the power of bringing different minds together to create something better than either could achieve alone.